So, the update 2.7 Red Skies update dev server is here, and it's interesting on the naval side of things. In this video, I'm going to first go over each of the new ships in order of country, and then I'll talk about some new mechanics, damage model changes, that sort of thing. First up, USS Wyoming. It comes after Pensacola, and it's, well, another American dreadnought, kind of similar to North Dakota, has an additional turret, and the guns are longer. They do not actually get the correct fire rate of 3 RPM. They're still at about 2 RPM, give or take about, a few percent. So, yeah, just like North Dakota, when it was first being added, it only has the APC-BC, and, well, APC, and it does not actually have an HE shell or SAP shell, despite the fact these guns would have had one. So, it seems a bit unfinished. You can also notice it has the slowest maximum speed of any dreadnought in War Thunder at the moment, I believe. I think most of them are faster than this. It's like, quite slow. I mean, even something like Westfalen's at 37, and this thing is just stuck at 33. So yeah, overall, this seems like it's a bit of a mediocre addition to the US tree. The armor and such are good, however, it's still not going to compete with the German ones in survivability. It has less RPM than the German ones, so it's still going to get matched or beaten in shells per minute. The shells aren't very good, so it's not going to compete with something like Maria or Hyuga in actual damage output. And if you look at it, they actually have less explosive filler than North Dakota shells with just 10 kilograms. So this ship just does not seem very good overall. It's probably better than North Dakota, but it's not going to shift the meta in the slightest. So yeah, if you play America, this is a good addition. You get something a bit better, but this isn't a reason to go out of your way and grind the US tree. That's how I'll put it. Next up is USS Candid, an Admirable class minesweeper. It has a single 76, 4 20mm around the bridge, and then 2 40mm in the back. Now, these were actually dual 40mm in real life, so that might be changed before this thing releases, slightly increasing its firepower. However, it's just not going to be very good, even with the fixed 40mm. It's extremely slow, and if you were to look at the US coastal tree, the LCS L3 beats it in basically everything, and it's just 0.3 higher. However, both of these are rather bad because they are at the same battle rating as destroyers, which can one-shot them and they don't have the firepower to effectively deal with. So, pretty much, this thing might be good against some coastal ships because it's a bit larger than them, so it can win in survivability. It's still going to lose to damage output to just about everything at the battle rating, though. And it's, too slow to do anything. It doesn't really have any armor other than gun shields. I feel like, you probably kind of get the point. This thing is just rather weak as an addition. Next up, Germany with the VSH Schell. So, first thing to note, before we can really discuss this thing, mines have had their life extended to 15 minutes in the dev server from 3 minutes. So just keep that in mind. If this thing had been added previously, there would be no point in even looking at it. Now it's a bit more notable. So this thing is rather large for a hydrofoil. It's a bit slower than most hydrofoils. It's, it's difficult to maneuver because, well, hydrofoils really kind of suck at maneuvering. It has an extremely weak gun loadout for its battle rating. You can get 3 MG151s on something in a broadside, maybe 4 if this turret has unlocked rotation angles. But that's not going to be very good. There's going to only be a few PT boats you can really kill with that. The main thing of interest on this ship is the mines, which are of kind of questionable value, even with the 15-minute timer. So yeah, this thing can block off choke points and be a bit of an annoyance, but I wouldn't see it getting many kills with the mines, even with the extended timer. It's just not very good, and honestly, I wouldn't really recommend buying this. I don't know the price of it, because I got, it on the dev server from Gaijin, but even without knowing the price, like if this thing was 1,000 golden eagles, I wouldn't recommend it. If it was even a bit less than that, I wouldn't recommend it. It's just not good. If you really want to use mines, then go for it, but it's, questionable as to the effectiveness of mines in gameplay. So Buy at your own risk if you want to. I'd suggest not getting it until you've actually seen it in action. Next up, Pr.30bis for Russia. It's very similar to Pr.30 Ognavoy. It's a bit larger is the main difference. If you look at the distance from the gun to the edge of the ship, between the two, you can notice that Pr.30 is much wider. It's 1 km/h slower. It has, I think, a few more crew. Yeah, 10 more crew. Wait. Yeah, 10 more. But overall, the ship is extremely similar. The main difference is the anti-air. It has one more 37mm, doesn't have the 4 Dishkas, and the 76mm in this turret are swapped out for 285mm. However, these ships are going to perform very similarly, and I don't know why this one's at 4.3. I have seen arguments for the normal Pr.30 being at 4.3, but if the Pr.30 Ognavoy is at 4.0, the Pr.30bis should be too. It comes after the Ognavoy in rank 2, as one would expect, so it's before Tashkent. It'll perform alright in a 4.3 lineup with Moskva and PR-7U. I would say that it's probably better than PR-7U, but Pr.30 Ognavoy is also already better than PR-7U, so yeah, this one doesn't really change much, but it is nice to get more destroyers and kind of fill out the rather lacking low-tier trees. I do just wish this thing came in the later refit, where it had 7 57mm autocannons, but maybe we'll get one of those in the future. Up next, Great Britain with 2 new additions. First up is HMS Liverpool, the new squadron ship, and it is just a town class with this turret removed. However, it's at 5.3, which is a huge increase to its effectiveness. Now, it's still likely going to get up-tiered and be relatively unable to fight on even terms with just about anything at 6.0 and lots of 5.7s. But for where it is, it should be rather survivable. It's got, thick armor, relatively good coverage. The ammo racks are very low down in the ship. It has 9 6-inch guns, which is quite good for its battle rating. And it has quite a bit of anti-air, with lots of 40mm just kind of dotted everywhere. There's not really much to say on this thing since we already have a ship of the class in game, but as a squadron vehicle, I'd say it's moderately good. It gives you a very easy way to just kind of get into top tier battles without, having to grind all the way up to the same battle rating. This thing can just be passively unlocked. It could be like your first naval match and you could play this thing if you just unlocked it through squadron points. Though I will say that if you're looking for something particularly viable, I would avoid anything in the 5.0 to 5.7 range, and that does include Liverpool, because it tends to just get dragged up to dreadnoughts, it can't pen them, they can kill it really quickly. It does not make for a particularly fun playing experience. Even something completely terrible like HMS Invincible just walks all over this thing. Next up, Leopard. So imagine Whitby, but you put another turret at the back, and you made the shells cost 60 SL each. So yeah, this thing is not great. It's going to cost as much as a battleship because Gaijin does that with late coastal vessels. It comes after the Brave class for some reason, which doesn't make much sense logically. However, I prefer it this way just because, it's easier to research through the Brave class into the Leopard than HMS Peacock into Whitby into Leopard. I think it'll be okay. It's still going to be worse than most destroyers. The gun angles aren't going to be particularly good. This is about as far as you can turn in, exposes a large amount of broadside, it has no armor. Yeah, this thing, it's like on its own, it's okay for the battle rating, but considering the difficulty of unlocking it, I just wouldn't bother. Just, go into Blue Water Fleet, unlock the battles in 1/100th of the time, have better ships and a more fun playing experience. So yeah, next up and last up is Italy with Dante Alighieri. It only took half a year, but they finally have an actual dreadnought. So there are a couple interesting things to note with Dante. First up, the shell selection. The 305mm SAP has really good penetration for what it is at about 400mm, and it also has 31 kilograms of explosive filler, which is pretty good. The APCBC has 626mm of penetration, which is excellent, but it only has 5.66 kilograms of explosive filler, which is extremely weak. So personally, I'd say just main the SAP, maybe bring a few of these if you're confident you can hit the ammo racks on an enemy battleship. It also has 120mm SAP with pretty good explosive filler. 2.2 kilograms is pretty nice. Then, 76mm APHE. It's not a time to use shell or anything on these. As far as the anti-air goes, leading into it, it has a ton of 76mm cannons everywhere. Now, these aren't great against aircraft because they're just firing armor piercing. However, it is more guns firing at an aircraft than many other battleships have, so that's quite good. Most notably, it has two 40mm pom-poms next to the bridge, making this the first battleship in War Thunder to have mid-caliber rapid-fire anti-air, which is quite nice. It also has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guns and a broadside for anti-ship duties, with these two rather nice-looking circular turrets per side. The armor layout, it's pretty normal for a dreadnought. There's not really much to say there, it's just kind of standard. It does have the 2 decks though, which is quite nice. And if you remove internal armor, external armor, and look at the internal armor, it has a 50mm turtleback scheme, it has coal bunkers. Just it's what you'd expect, really. And here's the X-ray layout. The shells seem to be just slightly above the water, including the magazine there, which might be a bit of a problem. But overall, it seems alright. So I think the main thing about this, it's not going to shake up the meta in any way. It's not better than Hyuga, it's not better than Maria. However, it is likely the most accessible dreadnought. Italy's tree is rather lacking, which of course has its disadvantages like relatively poor lineups, but it does have the advantage of meaning their tree is very easy to grind through. And one advantage of this, you can just kind of grind up through the destroyers, start on the 4.7 lineup, and then get Trento. Trento is the only rank 4 4.7 in War Thunder, at least at the moment, in this patch, but that doesn't get changed, which means you can grind out Dante Alighieri with no research penalties, and yeah, you never actually have to face battleships to do it. So this is the only battleship you can unlock without using battleships, unless you want 50% negative modifier. Okay, it would be worse than 50% in most trees, but you kind of get the gist. You can unlock this thing rather easily for what it is. So yeah, I mean, hey, if you've grinded out to Italian top tier, you don't really need me to tell you this thing's worth it, because it's a dreadnought. Dreadnoughts are kind of overpowered at the moment, even the terrible designs. This one seems pretty decent. So this is going to be kind of like a mid to upper tier dreadnought. It's not dethroning anything, but it's certainly coming in higher than lots of the other ones. So now that we've finished looking through the ships, it's time to look through some new mechanics. First up is the new shell cam. So this thing was shown off in the War Thunder dev stream, and if I just fire and hold my mouse button rather than releasing it, a moment into the shell's travel time, the camera will follow them. It's a little weird to move around, it feels very restrictive and kind of disorienting. And then once they hit, it pops you right back here. Now, if I were to continue holding my mouse button without actually lifting off until this gun was reloaded, it wouldn't fire. Now that's notable because it's rather different from how it worked before, where you could just hold the mouse button whenever the gun's ready to fire, it does so. So this is actually going to make it a bit annoying to use some of the faster firing guns. And while you're in the shell cam, you can't actually fire additional ammunition off. So you're going to have to now select fire pretty much every naval gun instead of holding the mouse button. Little bit of an inconvenience. Not terrible, but eh. So the next change, the destroyer damage models. They are most certainly different than they were before. That's a pretty good hit with the new damage models. Yeah, considering that, 283mm do relatively, okay damage with a midsection hit, you can guess how destroyers are doing with that, but I'll show that a bit later. That's just to give an idea of the baseline with a very large cruiser. And for the last new mechanic, you can launch float planes. It destroys your camera for a moment. But yeah, only Graf Spee is capable of doing this, it seems. It has an infinite reserve of them. They just kind of launch out of the bridge. And they come with 250 kilogram bombs, which I'm probably going to miss. But yeah, it's a bit strange. These can't cap points, by the way. They can, you know, they can shoot their guns without audio, apparently. They can drop a few bombs. You can't capture points with these. You can land in them. It doesn't actually do anything. So these have some interesting implications, but I don't think they're overall that positive for the mode. It just means we're going to have more aircraft constantly everywhere. And with the currently broken anti-air AI that just doesn't target things, it's going to be a major inconvenience. But yeah, at least they can't cap. That would have been a mistake. I just noticed this thing gets bomb reloads in realistic. I wouldn't be surprised if this feature does not actually reach the live build in this update. It seems very unfinished and it needs a lot of adjustment. And I don't know if even if it were properly implemented, if it would be a positive for the game rather than a negative. But yeah, you just get float planes now. And if I crash this, you'll notice I just have another. It has a few seconds of spawn protection, as you can see, where it just refuses to die. And that's expired. And as you can notice, I still just have another float plane there. And once it refreshes down here, I can do it again. But yeah, as I said, I wouldn't expect this to make it into the live build yet. It just seems very unfinished. So last up, we're here with the Type 1936 destroyer, so I can show off a few things on this scale. If I click and hold right here, you'll notice that even once my guns are ready to fire again, they don't. I haven't let up on the mouse button, they're still just not shooting. And the second thing you'll notice is that did nothing at all. So now you have to select fire, rapid fire guns. Well, actually you have to select fire every single gun in the game because you just can't hold it anymore. And destroyer guns do basically nothing. They just don't hurt each other very well. It's kind of weird. So that's with the HE. Let me pull out the HBF. Also, before anyone wonders, this is not due to the anti-frag armor on American destroyers. Pretty much every destroyer returns these results. It's slightly worse on the American ones, but everything's kind of messed up at the moment. So yeah, as you'll notice, I'm doing like 1% per shot. With, you know, just hits to midsection, hull, wherever. I can't hold my mouse button to fire, which is going to take some getting used to. Also, there's no way to disable that for anyone curious. The shell cam is simply a fact of life now. So just consider that this is one of the highest damage output destroyers for its battle rating. And it's just not doing anything. And then extrapolate that to everybody on both teams with about this level of survivability, and most of them having less firepower. It's going to be a total slog. This is just annoying. So, yeah. I didn't think I'd have to talk for this long. It's taking a really long time to kill this thing. So, yeah, you guys can probably see the problem. It just... everything takes so long. It's more realistic, sure, but the gameplay aspect is just so unplayably worse that, yeah, this is just going to be very annoying. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, the new shell tracers. They're excellent. I like being able to see the shell tracers. It makes aiming a lot more, you know, just good. So yeah, even continually shooting that guy, I couldn't kill it before the sinking thing did. That holds up with basically anything you're using to shoot it. Destroyers have just become stupidly survivable. Even cruisers struggle to kill them quickly at this point. Unless you have something extremely overpowering like 305mm SAP, good luck. But yeah, that's all for now. This dev server is not giving me much hope. It's kinda concerning. I've been hoping for Naval to have a notable improvement in an update ever since 2.1 kind of destroyed all the balance, economy, damage models. You get the gist. This is just another update where that's not happening again. So it's a bit disappointing. I was kind of hoping for something better than this. Pretty much any new mechanic seems unfinished, the new damage models are broken, and if they make it to the live server, destroyers will almost be unplayable. None of the new ships are really that interesting. The only one that really stands out is Dante, and that's just because Italy didn't have a dreadnought for about half a year when they really should have. This thing should have been in the initial dreadnought launch, it just wasn't. Like, Candid is terrible, Wyoming's one of the weaker battleships, Schell is just a gimmick. Pr.30bis is just Pr.30 again, not really different in performance. Leopard is overpriced with overpriced shells. Liverpool's an okay squad vehicle, but it's going to just get up-tiered and die. And Dante's a dreadnought, just like every other dreadnought. So yeah, I'm just a bit disappointed in this dev server. I was hoping for just anything interesting, and it's kind of a little disappointing to see the state of the mechanics. I don't know how long Naval is going to last at this rate. With every single update making it notably worse, more broken, less stable, not addressing actual problems like the economy, like how, you know, the inter-tier grind is forcing you to constantly go up in battle rating in very small increments, meaning that you're basically sitting in the crosshairs for these things for multiple tiers in, like, every tech tree. It's just, yeah, they're not addressing that, but we're getting more dreadnoughts at the same battle rating. So yeah, I really wish I had something better to say. I'm not happy that the game is in this state and there's nothing I can do about it. But yeah, hopefully in the second dev server some things improve, but I don't know what to expect at this point. Thank you for watching.